how to get started in real estate investing when you've got nothing, when you're starting at ground zero. That's today's episode. Let's dive into it. Hey everyone, I'm Clayton Morris, longtime real estate investor. Left my day job as a network news anchor in TV world last year and decided, you know what? This real estate thing has been working out for me for a number of years, and decided to teach other people about financial freedom. So if you're new to the channel, thank you so much for subscribing. This is the channel where we help you build financial intelligence and hopefully financial freedom. All the resources are right here. It's just up to you to take action. And our guest today on the show is somebody who took action, left a profitable job in the aerospace world. That's amazing. I could maybe say, I want to say a rocket scientist, but maybe aerospace. I left a TV job. She left an aerospace job thanks to real estate investing. She had a dream job working 9 to 5 in the corporate world, but said, you know what? This is not all it's cracked up to be. I want to get out, and I'm going to do that thanks to real estate investing. So she has done a lot, and we're going to dive into ways to get started today. My guest is Boone, and that is aerospace. Did I get that right? An aerospace engineer? So were you building like space shuttles?
I actually stayed in this atmosphere. I was an airplane girl, so I did study rocket science, but I like staying like somehow tied to Earth. That was kind of more my thing. So I focused on the airplanes. I did mostly like military jets, flight tests, top secret stuff, which was super cool. But yeah, you said the dream job, and it totally was for a lot of other people, but it turned out it wasn't really my dream job. So what are you gonna do?
That's great. So before we get into real estate, I love the paranormal stuff. My audience knows when I used to do Fox and Friends, I'd interviewed, Air Force One pilot flying Obama's plane being tracked by UFOs. Anything you can talk about? Any paranormal stuff? Any top secret stuff you could share?
Well, I signed a lot of papers saying I wasn't going to talk about any of that. So I'll touch base as soon as those things get released.
All right.
And I'll tell you which things I was involved with.
Okay.
I'm like,
all right. Trying to get some flying saucer information out of you. I tried, despite my best efforts. Exactly. All those NDAs you signed at Area 51. All right, we won't bring it up. All right, so Allie, take us through your story. So you're an aerospace engineer. Give us a typical day in the life of Allie when you were an aerospace engineer, and sort of what was that light bulb moment for you that said, all this work that I put in becoming an engineer, this doesn't make sense to me. It was pretty brave to walk away. Take me through what that was like for you.
So actually, the moment that you're talking about, it happened. I've never been accused of not knowing what I want. The minute I first walked into my first corporate cubicle as an engineer, I hadn't even sat down, and I was like, "This is not for me."
Wow.
I had just gotten a master's degree in aerospace engineering. I'd spent a ton of schooling. As you can imagine, the time and brain investment involved in this. And I didn't even sit down before I was like, I gotta get out of here.
Oh my gosh. So you walk in and you're like, how long was it from that moment to when you left?
5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. It was, so I had that moment of like, I've got to get out of here. Like I knew at the core of my being that it wasn't going to be my thing, but I didn't know how I was going to get out. It's like, well, how do you leave a corporate job? I didn't have a particular skill or service I could offer as a business. I didn't have a lot of capital to start investing all of a sudden. It's like, how do I get out of there? And that's kind of, the theme of our show is like, if you're at ground zero, what do you do? And not everyone's wanting out of their corporate job, but whatever your reason for possibly being interested in investing, the process that I ended up going through in those 5 years has really transferred or translated to me into a process that anybody can do for whatever you're trying to get involved with. But especially real estate investing is like, you start with nothing. How do you get to where you want to go and accomplish your goals? So that's kind of what I've learned and experienced. But 5 years later, I chucked it out of there, and I still play with spreadsheets because I have my engineering tendencies still, but I'm totally out of engineering now.
Well, that's great. So before we get into sort of maybe 5 steps here that can really help people if they've got nothing, they're at ground zero and they want to get started, we're going to kind of walk through these 5 steps. As an engineer, now, at my company, I've talked to so many investors who are engineers, And what keeps them from taking action is they're overly analytical. And they
I
spend
was like, I
way
already
too
know where
much
it goes.
time. They hang out in internet forums, they're reading stuff for 2 years. And I'll talk to them and say, what's taking you so long? And they're like, well, I'm an engineer. I've been reading for 2 years and I haven't taken action. Same thing with you?
Totally. When I have someone reach out, God bless engineers, I used to be one and I still have my moments, but when I have an engineer reach out and they say I'm an engineer, I'm like, oh, like, and I don't think I teach flying too. I'm a flight instructor. I hate teaching engineers how to fly. That's the worst. Real estate I can kind of deal with, but teaching an engineer to fly an airplane, oh, it's terrible. And I feel like I can only say this because I used to be one.
Right,
Or I
right.
am one.
You get a pass.
No, you're totally right. Because engineers need the math problems and the proof and all of this extra step. And oftentimes in real estate, I don't want to say you just kind of have to dive in because you got to get a little information, but like you got to be willing to take a risk. And engineers aren't really big risk people.
Yeah,
Really. Not
yeah.
in that context at all.
All right, so let's start at ground zero here. Let's start at step one. If you've got nothing, what is step one in this journey? If you're watching this for the first time and you say, honey, I think this real estate thing could be my bag. Where do you go? Where do you start?
So it's like something's not working. You want to get to a goal. And like where I was standing in that cubicle and I was like, I have to get out of here and I don't know what to do. The very first step, I believe, is to just start exploring. And I think this is a place where people really kind of fall short, is not knowing what all the options are. Because before we even get through all these steps, just know that I'm a huge advocate of finding what comes most naturally for you, because you can hear a lot of people talk and there might be some great ways to do things out there, but if it's not really in your natural way of being or your way of thinking, like you're going to be swimming upstream. So all of my steps are based on figuring out what will come most naturally to you, because when you find that, that's where you can really excel. So step number one, just start exploring everything. Read books, find authors that you resonate with, find podcasts you resonate with, find people because before I started this step, I didn't know about passive income. I had no idea about this concept, and I started reading about it. I was like, hey, that sounds like something I think I want that. Wait a minute, let me find out more. And so oftentimes you just don't know what the options are in order to know what you're shooting for. So explore, read everything. Always be careful of the source in what you're reading, but
Right.
Try a couple weekend workshops. Just start taking in the information.
Right. And stay out of areas where you have like these really negative people and internet forums that try to talk you out of doing anything. Because if you want to be talked out of taking action, just hang out on the internet for a little while. That'll keep you from taking action. But I love your point about just start exploring, because there are things that are going to resonate with you. You might be really into a certain budgeting blog because of the way that the woman writes about budgeting. It speaks to you, right? You might really like this real estate channel, I hope, because it speaks to you in a certain way, and you don't like these other gimmicky places or whatever it is. You're going to start to zero in on something that really speaks to you and you become passionate about. How, though, before we get to step two, how do you begin to narrow that focus so you don't get shiny object syndrome? Because you've got to start picking one course of action. If you start going in 5 different directions, it's not going to work, right?
Yep. So the one thing I did, I know this is going to sound totally cliche for a real estate investing podcast or conversation, but one of the first books I ever read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Sure.
And in that book, I was like, whoa, passive income, whoa. And so Robert Kiyosaki was saying things that, as you say it, were speaking to me. And so I'm looking at my bookshelf right now, I read multiple Robert Kiyosaki books. So I was like, wait, that guy speaks to me. And so when those shiny objects would come, I could recognize them, like, cool, but that doesn't really seem like my thing. And even once I got out of Robert Kiyosaki world, it was still, I love what you say. It's the things that speak to you, because there will be a lot of shiny objects and a lot of squirrels out there. And, one of my favorite quotes in the world is, don't take advice from people you wouldn't trade shoes with. And you can remember that as you find authors, as you find podcasters, as you find whatever, like finding the people who are doing what you're doing, and use those as your way to stay focused and not get distracted by everything else. Because you make a really good point about all the naysayers and there's going to be so many voices throwing out information at you. So staying focused on what is of interest, what is fitting to your goals, and who seems to be legit. And there's a lot of people giving advice out there about things they've never done in their lives. I'm like, I'm glad that I kind of got into this before there were so many voices out there. So yeah, just stay focused on your goal, and I think that'll help you avoid the shiny objects.
100%. I love what you said. And, it's like, I say hang out with people that you aspire to be, right? Or
Exactly.
if you're surrounding yourself by people who are telling you can't do something, right? Maybe it's even a family member. Maybe it's, I don't know, a
Always
relative
build
that's,
family first.
they've never invested in real estate before, right? But they're going to tell you why it doesn't work or why you don't know what you're doing, Allie. Like, Allie, you don't know how to invest in real estate. You're not going to be buying properties. You don't. Really? Uncle John, have you ever bought a property?
Really?
Well, no, but I saw it on TV once. It doesn't work out.
Exactly.
Really pay attention to your sources. And I love what you said about Robert Kiyosaki, too. He's been a guest here on the show, and he's become a good friend of the show. And he spoke to me. I mean, like that, when reading those words, I really zeroed in like you. It's good to know, like we share that because, I started reading that and the cash flow quadrant and, and then looking at, we even got the, cash flow board game for the kids and all that, because that higher level of thinking about cash flow and passive income really made a lot of sense to me. And it wasn't necessarily just focused on real estate too. It could be buying a business, but his idea was more umbrella than it was like nitty gritty. Here's the paint color you need to pick out for your property. And that's the kind of stuff I frankly don't care about. I mean, it didn't speak to me.
I'm with you. I'm more mindset driven. And Robert Kiyosaki, I swear, if I ever met him in person, I mean, his information in his books is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Me, when I started my entrepreneur journey, there were so many times that I was like, oh, this ain't gonna work. I was on the roller coaster, and things he had said in his books were what kept me going, because I was like, wait, this is what he was talking about. And but that's, his words may not resonate with some other people, but it happened to be for me, it happened to be for you. But it's finding those people that you jive with and that their words speak to you. I love that phrasing that you said. It's so true.
Yeah, absolutely. So great, step one, start exploring and really find something that speaks to you. What's step two in this process?
So funny, step two is actually narrow your focus. So what happened to me was I was exploring everything, right? I was like, I could start a business, I could invest in real estate, all these options, and I was exploring all this stuff. And one day I realized, I was like, wait a minute, I'm learning a little about a lot. And because I caught myself not making any forward traction. So it's like, okay, explore everything, find the authors, find the information that's resonating with you, and then pick something to focus on. In real estate investing, maybe you want to flip houses, maybe it's rental properties, maybe you only know that it's passive income, but you don't really know what to do about it. Maybe it's any number of things, but pick something to start diving deeper into, because you want to get past the surface. So step one, you're really getting surface level information about a lot of things. Now you want to pick something and dive deeper, and that's going to start you. And you don't have, if you pick the one thing, you don't have to stick with it for the rest of your life. You're not tied to it. You're not signing a contract. Great pun.
Right.
You can always change later, but you've at some point got to pick something to start working towards.
Yeah, that's a great point. You don't necessarily have to be tied to it, right? Like even if you're like me, you like to write down your sort of positive intentions and positive affirmations in your journal, right? You have things you want to achieve this year, so you're writing them down, like I will do this, this is coming to me, whatever. Maybe it sounds a little hokey to some people, I don't know. But you're not tied to those things. Those things can evolve over time as long as you commit to it, right? So if you find this one quote, you're going to flip houses, I'm a flipper. I'm going to do it. I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to focus on it. But if you find it, you hit a wall at some point, it's just not working for you, you can switch. You can move in a different direction.
Yeah. But it's like, you can make a sidestep. You can completely reverse course later. But if you so you've been studying rental properties and flipping and notes and who knows what you've been studying, but you're like, okay, I'm going to commit to flipping. That, you said the perfect word is you've got to commit to something. You can change it later if you need to, whatever. But if I say I'm going to commit to flipping, cool. Now what am I going to learn in order to get there? Well, that'll get into step 3, but it gives you that focus, because as long as you're focusing all over the place, the shiny objects, the squirrels, everything, like you won't be able to actually do anything because you won't have learned enough about one thing.
Right. We're saying a lot about The One Thing. Have you ever read the great book, The One Thing, by Jay Papasan and Gary Keller?
No.
Oh,
I want to, though.
it's such a great book. And it really teaches you to cut out all of that shiny object syndrome. We'll link it up in the show notes here for people to check out. But, I love the message because it really gets you focused on your goals, and it helps you eliminate all of the things that don't serve that one thing. It's like Curly from City Slickers. When he says, the secret to life, he sticks his finger up, the one thing. That's really what it is. All right, so start exploring, narrow your focus. What's step 3 on this journey, Allie?
Start studying. So let's say you picked flipping, which if you and I are passive income, we're probably not the big flippers, but let's say you picked flipping. So you've picked your focus, now start studying. What do you need to know in order to not only become a flipper, but to be a good one? Like, let's aim a little higher than just becoming a flipper. So I've decided I want to flip. What do I need to learn in order to do that? And then how am I going to get that information? Maybe there's a weekend workshop on flipping. Maybe I find a good author or a podcast or whatever that I really like their information about flipping. And I start figuring things out, like things I would want to know, like what are the actual steps to flipping? What are the risks of flipping? What are the mitigations to those risks? What do I need to look for? Just the basics of almost coming up with a plan. Like, okay, I'm going to flip a house. What do I need to know in order to not only do that, but in order to succeed? And so you're back to studying like you were in the exploration phase, but now you're studying a lot more focused. It's kind of like in college. We all have to take those undergrad like core classes. Like I could care less about history if I'm a science major, but this is getting into your major. So now you finish the core classes. You're ready to do major classes. What do you need to learn? And, keeping in mind, real estate, it's a self-taught thing because most of us don't learn this in school. So it's a little bit different than a lot of industries. So it's like not only learning the thing, but figuring out what you need to learn in order to do the thing. So now you have picked your focus and you're studying. So you explored as your first step, you narrowed your focus, and now you're studying specifically on your focus.
Love it, love it, love it. So get an academic, go through the academic process. And, I think about like real estate investing. I'm sure like you getting an aerospace engineering degree, your master's degree. I bet you could say you probably have a master's degree in real estate investing at this point. The amount of time that you've spent studying, drilling down and analyzing and doing deals over the years, you're an expert. You're a master at it, right?
Why, thank you. Like, where's my sheet of paper? I'll mail it to me.
Exactly. See, I know how to compliment a lady. All right. So start studying. Step 4 on this journey, after you've done all that work, you found a great course that speaks to you. And I would even say that you might find 5 different courses out there on wholesaling. You might find 5 different courses on flipping. You might, again, finding that one that speaks to you and then start to study and go through that process can really, really be important. So again, even on the studying piece, it can still go back to speaking to you.
And I think that's a really important mention, even back to the exploration phase is, so even in real estate, I tell people, how can you know if something's a good deal? Well, one of the easiest ways to figure that out is to shop around. Like, I tell, like, shop around, and when you start shopping around, you'll start being able to compare deals and like, oh, well, that one offers that and that one that, and you get this idea of like, what makes sense? What seems like the better deal? Because if you only look at one property, there's certain ways you can kind of know if it's a good deal, but what better way to know than compare it to 10 other properties? Like if you have 10 properties, you can see the better deal, whatever that may be.
Right.
So when you're studying, or if there's 5 flipping podcasts, listen to all of them and listen to what they all say and start pulling from all of them, because where your greatest success may be anyways is pulling bits and pieces from each and creating, maybe this guy said something really good about that and this guy said something like, oh, if I combine the, it gives you that ability, but you can also start figuring out who to trust, because it's like, I didn't really jive with that guy as much, but this guy in comparison with this guy seems to know what he's talking about. So I think that's huge, is don't just listen to one resource. Like in all of these phases, try a couple different resources and then, pick something that you got to figure something out at some point. But yeah, listen to all 5 of them for sure.
Right. No, that's a great point, because there was a podcast on a subject that I was interested in, and I found one podcast that I thought they kind of got right to the point, really informational and helped me along in this journey. And there was another one, they were prattling on for like 20 minutes about their weekend and what kind of beer they had. And they had all these like crazy segments of like, now it's time for this fire round and all, whatever it was. I don't know. They named it something, and like, what? They're just going to read from the mailbag? Or like, what are they, David Letterman? And I was just like, all right, this other one's was the more informational one. I'm going to start subscribing to that one. Yeah. I'm not going to be subscribing to that one. Not to go on that tangent. All right, step 4 in your process after we start studying.
Here's where the engineers falter. Step 4, and keep in mind this is not the last step. Step 4 is make a move. Try something. Don't try the most expensive big, I'm in Los Angeles. Don't try the multi-million-dollar flip as your first flip, but you have got to try something because this industry, there is no way possible. God bless the engineers because I know how they feel about this. There's no way to get all of the information that will prevent a catastrophe or a challenge or whatever later ahead of time. Like, this is an industry where you get enough information to hopefully avoid disaster, and you get enough information to get going, but so much of the learning, if not the majority of it, comes from trying things and learning from your mistakes. And you have to make the move because, like the engineers do, they sit and try and get educated more and more and more, and it's paralysis by analysis or analysis paralysis or whatever you call it. They never make a move, and it's like, you know enough to do something, you've got to do it because you can't, there's no such thing as getting enough information to prevent all problems later. So you have to make the move. You've got to find the balance between getting a lot of information and making that move, because you've got to make the move in order to start learning to even, my first move was a disaster. It cost me tens of thousands of dollars, but I had to do that because I had to learn, and I don't advocate everyone lose tens of thousands of dollars their first thing, but worst case, if that happens, you learn from it. So you've got to make a move for sure.
Yeah, it's going to happen. I mean, you're going to make mistakes, and for some people it happens on your first transaction. Unfortunate, right? Some people, it'll happen on your 50th or their 40th. It's going to happen. I've lost tens of thousands of dollars. It happens to the best of us. We've had, Ken McElroy, big time, multifamily investor on the show. He said, he's like, I've gotten burned on by everybody. Contractors, I've a roofer, you name it, I've been burned. It just comes with the territory. You got to make a move. And I also think, and this is going to get me in trouble with my wife, but you're never 100% sure of anything, right?
You can't be.
You can't be. It's impossible. So even if you're 80% sure, like I'm 80% sure I want to get married, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. You're never going to be 100% sure. Yeah, I know. I'm going to get in trouble. Hopefully she won't watch. But yeah, you're never going to be 100% sure, so you got to take action. The odds are in your favor, and if you make a mistake, you gave it your all, but you don't spend 2 years in analysis paralysis. Okay, step 5. This is the big home run, step 5 in this process.
Big one. You've made the move. Step 5 is to learn from the mistakes. Learn from, this becomes a, what do they call it? On-the-job training, OJT. This is an on-the-job training industry, so you have explored, you have narrowed your focus, you have studied up on that focus, you've made a move in that focus, and now whatever happens, and maybe nothing bad even happens, but I've had some situations where I still learn from it, even though it was fine, but it's like, oh, hey, I could have done that better, or hey, whatever, and constantly learn, because you're going to have challenges, you're going to have failures, or there's going to be ways to improve things, and that's where now you're in this thing of, now you can get education whenever you want, but you're trying things, and now you're learning from it. It's like, okay, I tried this thing. Okay, cool. That was a good first try. What went wrong? What went right? How can I tweak that into my next move? So step 5 and last step is learn from whatever move you made, and now you're going to start rinsing and repeating this whole cycle.
Perfect. I love it. There we go. So let's go down them. Start exploring is step 1. Number 2 is narrow your focus. Step 3, start studying. Number 4 is make a move, get off your butt. And step 5 is learn from those mistakes and iterate, improve the product and move forward. I mean, You know, that's what Apple does when it releases an iPhone or when it releases a keyboard
Yeah.
case. You know, they got slammed for their new MacBook Pro keyboards a few years ago because dust was getting in them. Guess what? The third generation Mac keyboard has a filament
Yeah.
underneath it that protects it. You know, so they learn. You got to learn from your
I
mistakes,
think
right?
that's such a great analogy. Apple didn't do it right the first time. Google didn't do it right the first time. There wouldn't be such things as updates or upgrades if everyone did it right the first time. So it's a make the move, learn, rinse and repeat, and just keep going. Always learn, because things are not gonna be perfect. If engineers and everybody else, you can't get enough education to make it perfect the first time. And if you don't believe that, ask Apple.
Exactly.
Or anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or ask us. So, Allie, it was great having you here on the show. How can people connect with you? We'll have everything we talked about linked up in the show notes and below here. But where can people connect with you?
You can always email me directly. I love saying hi to people. I love meeting people. It's just Allie, ALI, at hipsterinvestments.com. And I'm super excited, or totally not excited. I just got Facebook for the first time ever, like 3 weeks ago. So I am officially on Facebook. I have a page versus a profile. I don't understand Facebook. I don't have a ton on it because I don't have a clue what I'm doing. But you can absolutely connect with me on Facebook now, which I never thought would come out of my mouth.
Wow.
So, yeah, I'm on there.
Welcome to
And connect with me.
2003.
Friends.
Well, how does it feel?
Enter 2003 stage left.
Exactly. This is amazing.
So find me, because I don't know how to find you. So connect with me.
That's great. Well, Allie, we'd love to have you back here on the show. We can dive into all sorts of topics. I think you'll be a good friend of the show. So thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for carving out some time to run down these 5 steps. We really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. And thanks to all of you for downloading and subscribing. We really appreciate it. I'd love to hear your comments about taking action. Leave their comments in the thread below. Let us know what you thought about these 5 steps from Allie, and if you plan to take action. Now, just go out there, take action, become a real estate investor, because I believe it's the #1 way to build wealth. Just don't take 2 years to do it like an engineer. We'll see you next time, everyone.